Hello and welcome to MEE Live. I'm Matilda Mallinson. It's Thursday, the 27th of August, 2026. Today, a deep dive into the IDF's criminal probes as one investigation opens into the killing of Hind Rajab, another closes on the killing of foreign aid workers. We'll show you previously unseen footage of Israel's attack on the World Central Kitchen workers. Plus, a David and Goliath battle waged by Jewish-American businessman Ben Cohen, who's losing control of the company that bears his name because he won't stop talking about Gaza. Ben of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream will be joining me. James Henderson, known to everyone as Jim, grew up in Penryn in Cornwall. He was a keen member of the local boxing club, and he became a Royal Marine. But he'd left the service to do humanitarian work when, at the age of 33, he was killed in Gaza by Israel. He was engaged to be married. Jim was one of 7 aid workers killed in the 1st of April strike. They came from Poland, Australia, the US, Canada and Palestine, plus 2 others from the UK. John Chapman was 57 and James Kirby 47. Like Jim, they were former servicemen who left the military for humanitarian work. And like Jim, they were providing close protection for the World Central Kitchen, or WCK, whose vehicle was targeted after unloading more than 100 tons of aid in Deir al-Balah, central Gaza. What you'll see next is unpublished footage. The WCK vehicles clearly showed the charity's logo on the roof. Their route was shared with the Israeli army. They did everything by the book. But Israeli drones struck them anyway, vehicle by vehicle, and everyone on board was killed. Now Israel says no one involved will face a criminal trial. The announcement came on World Humanitarian Day. Israel, who previously called the strike a grave mistake and dismissed 2 officers, said its commanders had wrongly believed Hamas gunmen had taken over the convoy, but their decisions did not raise reasonable suspicion of criminal misconduct. So the case is closed. More than 2 years have passed for the victims' families, and the underlying evidence stays sealed. The backlash was global. Australia and Poland summoned Israel's respective ambassadors. The UK, Canada and Australia issued a joint statement calling Israel's decision too little and too late. UK Middle East Minister Stephen Doughty said he was appalled and angry for the victims' families. And what about those families? Today we have the privilege of hearing straight from Jim's father, Neil Henderson. Thank you for being with us. Tell us a little bit about Jim first. Who was he beyond the headlines of heroism that many people have read about?
Well, I don't think Jim would have called himself a hero, but he was a great believer in justice. He always stuck up for the underdog, always trying to help people. It was sort of in his DNA. He was always there to help. He was a unique son. I can't say any more. You can use superlatives and what have you. They're often used, and I don't mean to undermine anything like that, but he was just an amazing man. He really was. And to come to such a tragic end, it's still, the grief is still there.
Now, he used to serve in the UK Navy. What made him leave that life behind and go to deliver food in a war zone?
Well, yeah, he was in the Royal Marines. I think he'd done his time. He says that, I think a lot of young men put out challenges, and he thought, well, that was his challenge, and now he went into the security. I mean, the food aid delivery, but he was also involved in the Ukraine when Russia invaded, helping train first responders in trauma, providing security for ships during the business with the Somalian pirates. So it was always helping somebody. That was what Jim was all about.
If you're okay to share, would you just tell us how you and your family first learned about what had happened to Jim?
Oh, well, I'll never forget that day. It was on the news to start with. There'd been 7 aid workers killed and what have you. But it never passes through your mind. You knew Gaza was going to be dangerous in a sense. But it wasn't until his fiancée phoned my wife, Tricia, and she was in a bit of a state because she hadn't heard from him. He always phoned her, left a message if he was working late, but he would always phone her every night, no matter where he was in the world, and leave a message. And when she woke up in the morning, there was no message, and she phoned Trish, my wife, and she knew something was wrong. And then some representatives from SOS Global called on her, fortunately before, no disrespect, the press arrived, and well, basically, we knew what had happened, and they came round and broke us the news.
Now, it's been more than 2 years since that day. What has that search for answers been like for you? Has anything helped you to begin to heal, or do you feel that has been denied to you?
Well, we haven't moved on. The feelings are still raw anger, frustration, trying to search for answers. I mean, the Israeli government and the IDF, I mean, their whole attitude to me is just terrible. I mean, well, we know what they're like. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, they say they probably apologise, it was a mistake. We've heard nothing from them personally, nothing at all. Posted on social media, but that means nothing. So we've heard nothing at all, on a personal note, from the Israelis. And as far as the truth, I mean, there's a lot of, of course, there's an inquest still to go and legal bits and pieces going on at the moment. But we've had no real answers. It's just frustration, and the more we hear of the news and what's happening in Gaza as well, it makes it even worse, really. So we're no further forward, and if anything, more angrier than ever, if you like. It's just that nothing seems to be resolved, and things just seem to carry on as they were, if you like. As I say, we've searched for answers, trying some consolation, but no, we're really no further forward at the moment.
Now, Israel has, of course, closed the case. They say that this decision was made by independent military prosecution authorities on the basis of strict professional and legal considerations. Do you feel that a due course of justice has been looked at? Do you have trust in Israel's military judicial process?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. It's all been smoke and mirrors, and it's just a whitewash. It's taken 2.5 years for them to come to that decision, although I know they have to investigate a lot of incidents. But one's got to look at the military adjutant general who was originally investigating the case. She was hounded out by the right-wing extremists in Israel, which was absolutely shocking. They investigated themselves, the IDF, and as far as criminal damage goes, I just can't understand how they can say just by sacking several officers and giving them warnings was sufficient. I mean, one thing that runs through my mind, the attack on the convoy. Now, we believe that they were being watched all the time by drones. I mean, we know that they have drones everywhere, they're watching everything, and it's such a big operation as loading 100 tons of food off. Now, we don't know it. We've been told, it's been stated now that there was armed security there, but that was spotted leaving. And then, their trucks, the 3 trucks, were left. And according to the report by the IDF, one of the drone operators thought he saw a gun. And it turns out afterwards he said he was mistaken. Now, what really rankles me is I just can't, understand their logic, apart from they were quite happy with collateral damage. Because if those trucks had been hijacked, there was a good chance there was World Central Kitchen personnel in them, and they still destroyed them. And that, for me, to kill 7 aid workers, let's say, for example, to get one Hamas gunman, just doesn't sit right at all. It just does not.
Now, Neil, the British government has signed a joint statement condemning Israel's decision to drop the case into the killing of your son. Is that enough? If you could say one thing tonight directly to the British government, what would that be?
You've got to do more. You've got to stop this insanity. It's just, everybody knows it. It's just a terrible state of affairs that got to that position. There's a ceasefire going on. Supposedly, they're calling it a fragile ceasefire, but basically, Gazans are still being murdered and killed. And the British government, to me, it's all words. It's all words. There's no real action at all. Nothing at all. I mean, they're on about sanctions against settlers and bits and pieces, but they're not doing anything. They're really, it's a lot of hand-wringing. I appreciate the statement they made, but in all honesty, I think the Israeli government are just going to look at it and say, well, so what? They're just going to carry on with what they're doing. And, I mean, nothing stopped them so far. And it's a terrible state of affairs. And really what rankles me as well, they actually published that report that they weren't going to carry out criminal charges on Humanitarian Aid Day. I mean, that just, it was almost as if they're just sticking two fingers up to us, to be quite honest.
And finally, if you could give one message to the British public, to the international audiences watching this show, about Jim, about the victims of Israel in Gaza, about justice, what would it be?
Well, they need justice. History will show that they were right. But there's so many humanitarian aid workers killed, doctors killed, medical personnel killed, innocent people killed. It's a disgrace, and it's a disgrace on the whole of the world community.
Neil Henderson.
There's a lot of people shouting about it, but people need to realise it's, if anything, to try and understand what is happening there, you have to go back to 1948. I know this, people say, oh gosh, yes, all this time, but you've got to see what the history is behind that. It wasn't just the 7th of October. It's been going on for decades before. That was a terrible thing. But unfortunately, the media, don't believe the media. Some of the mainstream media is absolutely, it's smoke and mirrors. It's terrible. But if you need to look at it yourself and try and keep an open mind. But either way, whether it's justified or not what Israel are doing, which often I don't believe it is in no way at all, how can they let such suffering happen? It's absolutely disgraceful. 21st century, but it's almost medieval. It really is. And people need to speak up about it, which there are lots and lots of people. But unfortunately, in a lot of ways, especially Britain now at the moment, they're trying to silence them, which again is a terrible thing. But people need to be aware and speak out.
Neil, father of James Jim Henderson, thank you for your time. Israel's decision to close the WCK case has not happened in a vacuum. It followed the military's first substantive war crimes report since the 7th of October 2023. Published on the 19th of August, this reviewed roughly 150 exceptional incidents, in quotes. It ordered 2 criminal investigations, 2 disciplinary probes, and it closed the WCK case. The author of this report, Itay Offir, Israel's military advocate general. He came into the job amid controversy, dropping all charges against 5 Israeli soldiers who were caught on camera allegedly sexually abusing a Palestinian prisoner in Sde Teiman prison. Critics highlight a structural conflict. The military advocate general advises Israel's army during operations and later decides whether to prosecute the same conduct. In other words, legally, it marks its own homework. The 2 criminal cases they've opened are probably cases you've heard of. The massacre of 15 Palestinian paramedics in Rafah, March 2025. Israel's army first claimed the vehicles were advancing suspiciously without lights. But as you can see, footage from one of the victims' phones later revealed this was a lie. The other case opened was Hind Rajab's. On the 29th of January 2024, the 5-year-old and 6 of her relatives were killed in Gaza City. 2 Red Crescent paramedics were killed trying to reach her. The IDF claimed its forces were not near Hind Rajab's car, but the world heard her death on record. A warning, this footage may cause distress.
قريب كتير وعم تمشي
The announcement of this criminal probe is the first time Israel has admitted its soldiers fired on the car carrying Hind Rajab. But the girl's mother has rejected Israel's probe and demanded an independent international inquiry.
التحقيق لا يعني العدالة وأنا لا أثق في إعلام إسرائيل ولا بمحاكمتهم ولا بجيشهم ولا يعني لي شيء. أنا أريد ولا أقبل بقراراته ولا بتحقيقه. أنا أريد تحقيق دولي عالمي شفاف أمام العالم كله للمسعفين ولابنتي ولكل طفل استشهد في غزة ولعائلتي لأن هند هي صوت كل طفل في غزة. التحقيق لا
Can Israel's own military probes deliver justice? Or are they built to look like justice while delivering none? Earlier this week, I spoke to Jake Rom, the US representative and legal advisor for the Hind Rajab Foundation. I asked him, Israel has just opened a criminal case into Hind Rajab's killing, something the foundation has long demanded. So is this a step forward?
Short answer is no. We have long demanded that other states open an investigation into Hind Rajab's killing, or actually rather that other states act on our investigation and prosecute the people that we know to be responsible based on all of the available evidence and the deep, thorough investigation that our organization has already undertaken. This is not a step forward because we have absolutely no trust in the Israeli military justice system to investigate itself. Right? Like, if anything, this is perhaps a bit of a smokescreen and a step backwards. And what I mean by that is that as long as the Israelis can convince the world that they are looking into this crime, that they're conducting some kind of investigation, then that gives other states cover not to conduct their own investigation and not to prosecute the individuals. There's a principle in international law that if one state is investigating a crime or prosecuting someone for that crime, then other states or other mechanisms generally do not do that, right? And that is premised on the idea that if a state is undertaking a real, true investigation and actually going to offer a true punishment that fits the crime, then there's no need for another state to do that. But of course, what we know about the Israeli military justice system is that is not going to happen. And so I really think that this perhaps represents actually an obstruction, right? A move to obstruct other states or other mechanisms from undertaking their own thorough investigation and their own prosecutions.
So I suppose this is the principle of complementarity, is that right? In the International Criminal Court. So basically what you're saying is that these probes might end up shielding Israel from justice. I was going to ask you, why are we seeing this happen now? Why is this investigation being opened up now? Is this part of that answer?
I do think it's part of that answer. I think that, over the past 2.5 years, the world has watched as Israel has committed genocide in Gaza, has committed war crimes in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, the rest of occupied Palestine, with absolutely total impunity. And, no state has yet stepped in to put an end to this. In fact, much of the world still supports it, or much of the world's governments, I should say, because the world's people are generally against this. But at the same time, there has started to be a mounting pressure from the international community to get Israel to stop committing these crimes. And I think they're really starting to feel that pressure. And that this is an attempt that, it's a release valve, a way to try maybe alleviate some of the pressure that has built up by saying, no, look, we actually do care about the rule of law. We really do care about international law, and we're not violating the law of war. And in fact, when we suspect that the law of war has been violated, we are going to look into it. Now, it's very telling that of all of the cases, of all of the crimes that we have seen the Israelis commit, they are launching an investigation into the 2 most high-profile crimes, and the ones in which there have been many independent investigations that have, proven Israeli criminal conduct, right? Now, if we remember, right, the Israelis for quite a while denied that there were even Israeli troops in the presence of Hind Rajab. right? And then now suddenly they're acknowledging what the entire world knows to be true because there's no possible way to deny it any further. And so they are taking these very, very high profile cases to try to alleviate the pressure that has built up on them for their criminal conduct over the past 2.5 years. But I should say their criminal conduct dates back to 1947. It does not begin, obviously, on October 7th. But this is a sign, really, that they are feeling the pressure and are trying to think of anything possible to, take that pressure away, to make it look like they're actually behaving like a normal state.
So you say that the cases that they've decided to investigate, that the Hind Rajab case, the other one is the massacre of 15 paramedics in Rafah in March. Looking at Hind Rajab's case, what evidence actually is there that enables you to describe this as sort of as undeniable? Just talk us through what has been uncovered so far and what a genuine criminal investigation would have to establish.
Yeah, so I can't really go into much detail because these are ongoing things, and we're really trying to have these people prosecuted in national courts, and we don't want to give away too much about our methods and our sources and things like that. But what I can say is that the Hind Rajab Foundation has conducted a very thorough investigation into this killing, looking at witness testimony, looking at open source intelligence, forensics, open source intelligence about what military units were there, and how that matches the forensic evidence of the munitions that were fired. And what we concluded is that Hind and her family and the paramedics were killed by the members of the 52nd Armored Battalion, right? And we know the names of these people. We've made some of them public. There's Colonel Beni Aharon, who is the commander of the brigade under which the battalion operates. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Ella, who's the commander of the battalion. Major Sean Glass, who's the commander of the company, the Vampire Empire Company, which we attribute the killing to. And we know the names of 22 other soldiers, right? Who bear liability for this crime that we are choosing not to release at this moment because we don't want to tip them off and prevent them from traveling to jurisdictions where they might be prosecuted or from deleting evidence that they themselves have published. But basically, we know the killers. We know who the killers are. And one thing that everyone in the world knew, even prior to our investigation, is that Israel were the killers. This is something that they denied entirely. And so I also want to note something about the investigation based on public reporting is that based on what I've seen the Israeli military say, they're not actually even looking into the people who fired the bullets that killed Hind and her family and the paramedics. What they're looking into is a failure to coordinate with KOGAT, the Israeli agency that's responsible for coordinating activities in the occupied territories. And so what they're saying is that, well, the paramedics did call the right people, and then those people failed to convey that to the military, and so everyone was confused, and what a tragic error. And of course, there was maybe negligence, and that's what we're looking into. But we're not looking into the deliberate murder of a child and her family and paramedics in clearly marked civilian vehicles, right? So what they're trying to do with this investigation is not only to alleviate the pressure that has built up around this case, but also to take what is truly a very heinous murder and turn it into a mere administrative error. And that is not what an actual investigation would look like.
Can you just help us understand that the actual investigative process underway? So Hind's case now goes to the Military Police Criminal Investigation Division. Mm-hmm. Israel says it has a functioning, independent military justice system. What does the track record actually show about where these investigations end up?
So the way this works is a number of incidents are referred to what's called the General Staff Mechanism for Fact-Finding Assessments. And this is a mechanism that reviews what they call like anomalous or exceptional incidents, what we would call war crimes, and undertakes a rapid investigation and decides whether there's enough evidence to refer that to the Military Advocate General for further investigation and possible prosecution, right? And what the track record shows is that this mechanism is not interested in accountability. It is interested in impunity. It is interested in shielding Israeli soldiers from ever being investigated and from ever facing justice. This is something that Palestinian organizations like Al-Mazan and Adalah have reported for many, many years. There was also a very good report by an Israeli organization called Yesh Din in 2024, which reviewed the FFM is what it's called, the FFA mechanism, track record over the past 3 major Gaza incidents. So that's Operation Protective Edge, the murders and shootings that took place during the Great March of Return, and Operation Guardian of the Walls. And what they found was that of all of the incidents that were reported, and these were campaigns like every campaign in Gaza that have been marked by massive criminality on the Israelis' part, that of all of these incidents, only 664 even made it to the FFA in the first place. Of those, only 41 led to a criminal investigation. And of those, only 0.17% resulted in a prosecution, right? And usually what happens in the minuscule cases where there is actually a prosecution is someone gets a slap on the wrist. You know, they get an administrative punishment. They get demoted. They get placed on leave. They get kicked out of their unit. People generally do not go to prison for these things. And I think of a case that happened during the present genocide, and I think it's the only criminal prosecution that resulted in punishment during the course of the present genocide related to crimes against the Palestinians. It was a man who named Israel Hajabi, who was a guard at Sde Teiman, who was convicted of what the Israelis call unbecoming conduct. Now, what unbecoming conduct refers to in this case is attacking bound and blindfolded Palestinians with his weapon, beating them, forcing them to make animal noises on camera, things that are paradigmatically torture, right? And for this crime, he was sentenced to 7 months in prison, just 7 months, which is just, it's a sentence so lenient as to barely be a punishment at all, right? And so this is what I mean when I say we have no confidence in these investigations, because these investigations are not interested in justice. They are interested in presenting the illusion of justice, the illusion of accountability, so that the world looks away and thinks of Israel as a normal, law-abiding state.
Thank you. And if we are to look at alternatives, the Hind Rajab Foundation has filed complaints in more than 20 jurisdictions, plus an ICC complaint against more than 1,000 soldiers. You have named specific units and commanders over Hind Rajab's killing. But as far as I'm aware, no complaint has produced a prosecution. Why is this?
Well, for a few reasons. I should say that while no complaint has yet produced a prosecution, a number have been accepted by their respective judiciaries where they've been filed, and investigations have been launched. And so this is an ongoing process. But I think we have to understand the position that we're working from, which is one of profound hostility to impunity. And this is not just the Israelis, or no, profound hostility to our work, I should say, profound acceptance of Israeli impunity. The Israelis, as I said earlier, have enjoyed impunity for their crimes for as long as the state has been around. Because for as long as the state has been around, they have been committing crimes. They've been committing really, truly heinous crimes against the Palestinian people and everyone in the area without any kind of accountability whatsoever. And this kind of impunity seems to be baked into the world system. It's something that the West in general has invested itself in, both materially and politically. Let's not forget that this genocide is sustained in large part by material investment, weapons investment from a number of Western countries, of course, in particular the United States, but England, France, Italy, etc. So we're really starting on the back foot here. This is not a political climate that is interested in punishing people for their crimes. But that being said, I think that what we're doing is an iterative process, by which I mean, when we started this foundation 2 years ago, no one took it particularly seriously. And now we have war crimes units from around the world who are interested in working with us, who approach us and ask for help in identifying war criminals. And this is a result of just the process of doing these filings over and over and over again, and highlighting that these crimes that we think of as these large structural crimes, these are crimes that are committed by people, right? And they have names and they have affiliations. We know their units, we know where they were, and we have the evidence. And through the act of doing these filings, we try to make that evidence hard to ignore. And we try to place on states, but not place on states because they already have the obligation, right? To alert states and alert people in these states to the already existing legal obligations that they have to undertake these prosecutions. right? That stem from the Geneva Conventions, to which all states had party, to the Genocide Convention, Convention Against Torture. All of these things place an affirmative obligation on states to prosecute alleged war criminals or genocidaires within their borders. And these statutes that all of these states have, and these international legal obligations, they've been dormant, right? They've been dormant for a very long time. And we look at our work not only as a way to counter Israeli impunity, but also a way to try to save international law from complete destruction, right? International law is articulated by states, it is enforced by states, it is created by states. And insofar as they are unwilling to enforce the rules that they have worked so hard to articulate, then it's going away. And so we are saying, do you want to save the international legal order? Do you want to be an actual member of an international legal order that is premised on the rule of law and not on brute force alone? Well, let us help you, right? Here is all the evidence you need. Here is what you must do. And you are already obligated to do it. And through that process, we had an arrest in Belgium. They articulated that they were arresting these 2 Israeli soldiers because of the principle of universal jurisdiction. They ultimately punted the case to the ICC, which is not what they should have done. But still, that's a good sign. We've had investigations launched in Brazil and Peru and elsewhere. And most importantly, I think the Israelis are afraid. For the first time, they're actually afraid of consequences. And I think that's why they're launching this investigation, to go back to where we began. But they now take their official portraits with their heads turned away from the camera so they can't be identified. They have teams that instruct soldiers on how to behave when they're abroad because they might get arrested for war crimes. This is the first time really ever that they have been genuinely afraid of consequence. And that means that that wall of impunity that they have built up and that the world has allowed them to build up for so long is starting to crumble, starting to chip away. And unfortunately, the law is a slow moving mechanism, and the demands of this genocide are so urgent that there will always be a mismatch there. But it's one of the tools in the toolbox, and it's a necessary tool, and it's the one that we know how to use. And so that we're playing our part in trying to end this genocide and end Israeli impunity and get justice for the victims. But it's going to take a long time. Yeah.
Ben & Jerry's is famous for 2 things: ice cream and social justice. Since opening their first scoop shop in Burlington, Vermont in 1978, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield's brand has backed civil rights, refugees, the climate, and now Palestinian rights. It's the poster child for profit with a conscience. But the path of righteousness has been a rocky road. The brand's corporate owners do not share the same social priorities as its founders, who say that they have been locked in a battle for the company's soul.
Save Ben & Jerry's!
Save Ben & Jerry's!
Save Ben & Jerry's! Save Ben & Jerry's!
Back in 2000, Ben & Jerry's sold to Unilever for $326 million, but they insisted on a special contract.
The board wanted to remain independent, but if they couldn't stay independent, the board wanted to ensure the preservation of the social mission and safeguard the integrity of the brand. Ben & Jerry's board wanted to make sure that the social mission remained fully integrated with operations. It wouldn't be treated as a sideshow to what the company was doing.
An independent board and a preserved social mission. This worked fine for a while. Israel would be the breaking point. In 2021, the independent board declared Ben & Jerry's would stop being sold in illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. There was uproar in Israel, whose president called the ice cream boycott a new kind of terrorism. The pressure worked. Unilever sold its Israeli branch to local businessman Avi Zinger. Ice cream was back in the settlements within a year. In 2024, the fight went legal. Ben & Jerry's sued Unilever, accusing it of censoring its social mission. They said they were blocked from calling for a Gaza ceasefire and even using the word Trump. In 2025, things escalated. Jerry Greenfield resigned. The chair of the independent board was pushed out, and Ben Cohen was arrested for protesting the Gaza war.
While the committee conducts its business, Capitol Police are asked to remove the individuals from the hearing room.
Move down the hallway.
Ben, why are you getting arrested?
Move down the hallway. If you stop, you will be arrested.
Poor kids in Gaza by buying bombs and pays for it by kicking kids off Medicaid in the U.S.
Keep going down. Keep going down the hallway.
Ben, how many days have they been starving in Gaza?
What has it been? 75 days? Stop.
It was also the year Unilever spun off its ice cream division into a new independent company called Magnum, as in Magnum ice creams. This has handed Ben & Jerry's a legal setback. Last week, a federal judge ruled Magnum, not Unilever, should be the primary defendant of the lawsuit, and he narrowed the case, dismissing most censorship claims while allowing financial and select governance challenges to move forward. Ben Cohen turned to the court of public opinion. Kareena Kapoor is a Bollywood superstar and a Magnum Unilever ambassador in India, but she has previously spoken out about violence against Palestinian children, so Cohen called on her publicly to cut the company endorsement. Stones have been thrown from both sides. In June, Avi Zinger's division launched an Israel-themed Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavour called Milk and Honey to celebrate local resilience. Zionism's territorial claims to Palestine hark back to biblical metaphors of a land flowing with milk and honey. But Ben Cohen is not stopping at lawsuits or celebrity campaigns. Now 75, he is fighting to buy the company back and set it free. Magnum says it's not for sale. My guest tonight is the man whose name is on the tub. Ben Cohen, welcome to MEE Live. I want to just talk about the lawsuit first. Last Friday, a judge dismissed most of Ben & Jerry's lawsuit and made Magnum, not Unilever, the main defendant. How major a defeat is this for the fight?
Well, my understanding is that the lawsuit was presented based on two separate documents. One was the acquisition agreement and the other was the settlement agreement. And the judge said that all of the arguments could go through based on the settlement agreement. So we don't really see it as a setback. I mean, the case could have been made on the basis of either document, and the judge said all these arguments continue, but based on a different document, based on the settlement agreement.
So the fight goes on.
The fight goes on, absolutely. I wish we were just sitting around eating ice cream, but as you say, the fight goes on.
Well, I guess I will be later, lucky for me. Is it okay that we bought this, actually? We had to have a little dispute about whether or not to buy this because, of course, the independence of the board continues pushing Ben & Jerry's social missions. But there is this tug of war with Unilever and Magnum. How do you feel about people still buying the ice cream?
I think people should buy a lot of Ben & Jerry's. It's really good stuff. The situation here is that Ben & Jerry's is the victim, so we don't want to hurt Ben & Jerry's by a boycott. Magnum owns a lot of brands, particularly the Magnum ice cream bar. And so we're suggesting that people boycott Magnum bars and other brands that they own.
So Magnum, you say that Magnum, which is the company now running Ben & Jerry's, is Trumpified. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I think that they've gotten rid of their director of DEI. They've told the company that they will not allow the company to use the name Trump or criticize many of his policies, which go against the values of Ben & Jerry's. So, I mean, Trump and his policies are the gravest attack on the values of Ben & Jerry's since the company was founded. And by muzzling the company and preventing it from speaking out against these injustices, they're kind of making the social mission hypocrisy.
Ben, you are calling on Bollywood superstar Kareena Kapoor to drop Magnum. Why put a corporate fight on a celebrity's shoulders?
Well, the problem is that she has taken a strong stand, and we certainly agree with it and appreciate it, in favor of Palestinian rights and their right to life. But at the same time, she is helping to promote a company, Magnum, that is silencing Ben and Jerry's on the same issues. So we're asking her to use her power and her influence with Magnum to get them to finally abide by the acquisition agreement, stop muzzling the board, and if they can't do that, sell the company to investors that are socially aligned.
Has she responded to you at all? Are you expecting her to respond at all?
I haven't seen any responses, and who knows?
Ben, I have to ask, you are 75, I think? You sold this company a quarter of a century ago, yet you're spending your days trying to buy it back and set it free. And not just that, you're getting arrested in the Senate. Why does this company battle matter enough to give your life to it now?
Well, it's a yearning for justice. It's a realization that Ben and Jerry's can be and has been in the past a very, very powerful force for progressive social change. And I want that to continue. I think when Ben and Jerry's joins with other advocates, it makes the campaigns stronger. And right now, Ben and Jerry's is being neutered. And I just want to set something straight, that Ben & Jerry's was a publicly held corporation. Unilever ended up offering a whole lot of money for the stock. So it was forced to sell. I resisted that sale. And and I'm personally not looking to buy it back. I am wanting the values to stay alive. And so I'm advocating for a group of socially conscious investors to become the owners, people who actually support the social mission instead of fighting the company every time it tries to take a strong stand on a controversial issue.
So you opposed the Unilever purchase at the time. Was it that you feared something like this would happen, basically?
That's exactly right. That's exactly why both Jerry and I opposed it. We fought really hard because we were concerned that if it got owned by a company that didn't share the same social mission, the same social values, that they would eventually be eroded and disappear. And, the interesting thing is that for the first 20 years, when it was owned by Unilever, they kept their word and the social mission thrived. But as soon as it got spun off into the Magnum Corporation, that's when they fired the CEO, the 30-year employee, because he was listening to the independent board, and then they got rid of the entire independent board, and then they stopped funding the Ben & Jerry's Foundation. So that's the issue.
Well, it feels like a rare thing that there is a corporation of such success and scale as Ben & Jerry's that holds on to social values so tightly. Today, we're in a situation where in 2021, Ben & Jerry's board ruled to stop selling in illegal Israeli settlements. That decision was undone within a year. Today, the ice cream is not just back in the settlements. The Israeli branch has launched this Israel-themed milk and honey-flavored ice cream. Does that feel like it was done in spite, or how do you feel about that direction today, given everything that you've been fighting for?
Well, I feel like we've done everything we can. I think the independent board of directors of Ben & Jerry's has been incredibly courageous. What ended up happening was that because of Unilever deciding to sell off the rights to Ben & Jerry's to this Israeli, they ended up having to sue Unilever in court. And that's what began this whole long conflict. And that's what made it clear to me that there's no way that the social mission of Ben & Jerry's is going to survive as long as it's owned by the Magnum Corporation.
And you've mentioned the board, you've praised the independent board. The boardroom is one of the maybe less visible places that this battle is unfolding. Several members have been purged in recent years. Magnum says that it removed the former chair, Anuradha Mittal, for serious misconduct and conflicts of interest, not for her Palestinian rights advocacy. Do you want to respond to that at all?
I think Anuradha is a strong, courageous woman who is highly ethical, and I think that the charges against her are a sham, and I just really appreciate all the hard work that she's put into keeping the values of Ben & Jerry's alive.
Somewhere, I think a young entrepreneur is going to be watching, someone who thinks business can be a force for good. At the same time, they see you struggling to get control of the brand that you built on those values. What would you say to them? Can a company keep its soul once someone else owns it? Or is there a different line of advice that you'd share?
Well, ideally, you don't want someone else to own it. We tried very hard to keep Ben & Jerry's independent. And because we were so resistant, that's why this unique governance structure was created, which created the independent board that has control over the social mission and the quality of the product. But ideally, I think you want to keep your company independent. Don't sell it. Make the values primary. Make the values the most important part. I mean, I think Ben & Jerry's came up with a 3-part mission that baked the social mission into the whole purpose of the company. So it's as important for the company as making great ice cream and as making a profit. And that's what I would advise to young entrepreneurs, is to bake the social mission into the company from the very beginning, in terms of the bylaws, in terms of the whole purpose of the organization.
Now, of course, the battles that Ben & Jerry's fights, it's not just about Israel, Gaza. Ben & Jerry's as a company now sort of has a target on its back from the anti-woke media brigade. One of the causes that really spoke to me early on was the fight for refugees that Ben & Jerry's took a strong stance on. I also think it used to be the case that it used to be easy to take a pro-refugee, refugees welcome stance, but that became politically much more dangerous, much more commercially dangerous as the years went on. Was it ever a dispute whether or not Ben & Jerry's would dilute that messaging to because it became so much more politically toxic? Or was it really always very, very important to those on the board, to those at the heart of Ben & Jerry's, to stand with refugees?
I think Ben & Jerry's has done a good job of standing in favor of refugees, and I've been proud of that. I don't know what's happening, in terms of changes to that as a result of the problems that we're having, but I really think that in terms of soul and spirit and common decency, we need to kind of follow the words in the Sermon on the Mount. I mean, we need to love thy neighbor. We need to be, help the least of these. I mean, we just need to be caring and loving toward each other, and there's no conflict with being a for-profit business and being caring and loving toward each other. I mean, I think about my country and, how it's spending 70% of its expendable income on preparing to kill millions of people. For that same amount of money, we could be feeding everybody in the world who's hungry. We could be providing great education for people in our own country. We could be providing health care for people. We just need to approach the world through based on love instead of hate. And that's based, Cornel West has this quote. He says that justice is what love looks like in public. And I feel like that's what Ben & Jerry's is about. That's what I'm about. That's what a whole lot of other people are about. And that's one of the reasons why Ben & Jerry's has such a strong, loyal following, because people believe that. People believe in justice, they believe in love, and it's so absurd that, individual families in our country have no desire to be killing families just like them in other countries, and yet that's what our government is doing in our name and with our money.
Ben Cohen, it's been a real privilege and a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. And to all of you watching, thank you for tuning in. That's all that we have time for. But subscribe, make sure you're following us on social media at Middle East Eye, and you can email meelive@middleeasteye.net. I'll be here live at 5 every Tuesday and Thursday, noon if you're in New York. See you then.